Good evening, everybody. My name is Jay Aronson, and I am the chairman of the board of the Board of Advisors for Camp Jewell. My privilege to be so, and thank you all very much for coming here on a Sunday evening. I'm honored and privileged to welcome you all to the 114th Camp Jewell annual meeting. I'd like to thank all the professional staff, volunteers, and board members and guests who make this place tick and who work hard behind the scenes to make Camp Jewell the best camp in the country. We are going to start with dinner now, and then we'll come back a little later for our board meeting. First, I'd like to introduce Paul Muska, member of our board, to do the invocation.
Good evening, and welcome to camp for those who are visiting us. I just want to do a quick review of 2014. Largest summer camp ever in the history of the camp. Fantastic. This place was humming last year. If you had the opportunity to come up when the people were checking in, it was nonstop for several hours. The other thing I look at is who we've hired, or Ray and Craig have hired this year. Fantastic staff. Some returnees. Steve. It's nice to see he's back on this side of the pond. Each of us has a memory. Some of us went to family camp. Some of us were staffers. Some of us were campers. This place brings out those memories that last a lifetime. And I look at what's happening here at camp. Thunderdome is nonstop during family camps. It's been renovated. TT's Grotto is almost finished. Next weekend, by the way, if you want to come and help out, please do so. There you go, Dean. Or during the week. We, the board, really welcome everybody who can come to camp. And let this food kind of be the springboard for the summer. Energize you through the next couple weeks to get into the summer and then beyond through the rest of the year. So welcome, enjoy the food, have fun, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Paul. So we're going to do this family style. So if each table can have a representative, head up over to the bay windows over here to pick up the food and enjoy dinner. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start our annual meeting. So if you're still finishing dessert, please enjoy. I'd like to give some highlights from my chairman's report. And some of those highlights include as Paul mentioned earlier, actually, the largest summer camp enrollment in camp's history. We have new partnerships with CREC, which is the Connecticut Regional Educational Council, Achievement First, Camp Rising Sun. These multiply our efforts to meet our mission, and those collaborations continue to grow. Our fundraising efforts continue to create opportunities to enhance camp's facilities. Last year, the swimming docks were put in. TT's Grotto is nearing completion. And by the end, I shouldn't say by the end, before camp starts, the lake will be filled again so that everybody will be able to enjoy the new Wet Willie slide, which will be on the far side of the boathouse. As we look to the future, we are inching ever closer to our first cabin replacement. This has been a major undertaking. Our fundraising efforts continue to move forward. These cabins at camp are well over 60 years old. Norm and his staff and prior property managers have done everything in their power to keep these things up and running, and it's time to say goodbye to them. So hopefully within a few months you will get news of some exciting stuff that we're going to do with replacement cabins. I have nothing else for my chair report, but we do have to do some official business for board elections. There are no officers up for re-election at this point because we are in our beginning of our second year of our first term. So the actual only election is to induct the class of 2018, and I will announce their names. Class of 2018 includes Ray Weaver. If you're here, please stand up. Ray Weaver, Jamie Silver, Jerome Alpert, Rusty Everett, Rachel Pack, Joe Brock, and Jeff Kaplan. I need a motion from a member. Motion. And may I have a second? Any discussion? If not, a vote on the class of 2018, please all signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Our board continues to grow, and the people who you just saw stand and those who couldn't be here tonight, plus about 15 other members, work hard and are proud to do whatever we can to help Ray and his staff continue to make camp the best place around. So I'm going to ask Ray to come on up and introduce Mary Huth.
All right, so as many of you know, we've talked about this a lot over the last year. Camp Jewell, over the last couple of years, has been in collaboration and partnership with the Craig Family Resource Center located at the Wilson Gray YMCA down in the north end of Hartford. And last summer, we brought, I believe the total number was 89 kids from the north end of Hartford through the Craig Family Resource Center to camp. And they had a huge impact on not only the impact was not only on them, in that these kids that were certainly not used to having this kind of experience in their lives, being able to come and enjoy camp, but the impact was on everybody at camp. And one of the great successes of last summer was that bringing all these kids from the north end and adding them to our camp community enhanced the experience for everyone at camp more than it detracted. In fact, I would say that it was one of the most impactful things that we could have ever done to increase the quality of the experience for our campers, and that every single person that came to camp last summer got to meet somebody from the north end of Hartford and participate in those programs. Tonight we have a very special guest, Mary Huth, who is from the Craig Family Resource Center, and she's a guidance counselor that works with all these kids in the individual schools that they attend, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the experience of going to camp last summer for them, as well as the impact that it has had on them having gone back to school, and the impact that it's having on the North End community. So without any further ado, Ms. Mary Huth.
Thank you, Ray. And first, I just want to thank you all and tell you I feel very honored to be here I know the role that you all play in the direction of Camp Jewell, and I don't think I would be here speaking if it wasn't for all the hard work and commitment from the board of directors of Camp Jewell. So my position, I am the social work coordinator for the CREC Family Resource Center, and I also coordinate the CREC Intensive Intervention Team. So I work with a board-certified behavior analysts and social workers and counselors who deal with kids with the most significant behavioral and social emotional problems in our 19 magnet schools. So we work with some really tough kids. I also have the opportunity to work at the CREC Family Resource Center on Albany Ave in Hartford, which if you've been to the Wilson Gray YMCA, you will know that it is located in the poorest zip code of Hartford, and Hartford is one of the poorest cities in our nation. So we have a lot of families who we have been able to serve through the Family Resource Center because it sort of is an oasis for many families. It's a very safe place to be. It's a place where people feel really connected and feel oftentimes much more comfortable than they would out in some of our magnet schools that are located out in the suburbs. Going back a little bit, I just want to tell you how I first got involved with Camp Jewell and the Ray and Ruthie and Craig. I was working as a social worker at one of the CREC magnet schools, and Ruthie Napoleon was also involved with the school. Her children go to school there, and she's a very active volunteer, in addition to the many roles that she plays here at Camp Jewell. And she brought an opportunity to our school. She said, we've got some scholarships for kids 7 and older for 2-week camp scholarships at Camp Jewell. I knew nothing about Camp Jewell. I had never been here. I'm relatively new to Connecticut. I had moved here from Massachusetts. And it came across my desk. It kind of got stuck somewhere, and it finally ended on my desk, and there was kind of a deadline looming, and I was like, wow, this sounds really great, but I do not know how we are going to pull this off in the amount of time that we have to pull it off. How am I going to share this with some of these families who I can't even get them to come into school? Some of these families I can't even get to return a phone call. The kids needed to be from Hartford, and there were some certain criteria. But Ruthie said, as she always does, because she's one of the most relaxed, easy to work with people that I have had the pleasure to deal with, don't worry about it. And I was like, I've heard that before, but I know I need to worry about it. So we started pulling, and I said, but I've got this kid, and she said, don't worry about it. And I was like, really? And so I said, well, this child could really benefit, but she said, don't worry about it. So I said, okay, so we got everything rolling, we got the applications somewhat filled out, we met with a fairly resistant kind of group of parents who are like, what do you mean it's free? This cannot be free. What's the catch? And so what we did was we organized an event at the Wilson Gray YMCA, actually before the Family Resource Center had even been developed. So the first event that we had as a Family Resource Center was due to a meeting for Camp Jewell, and it was held up in the room that is now the CREC Family Resource Center office. And we did everything. Ruthie said, don't worry about it, don't worry about the deadlines, we'll move things. I talked to Ray, whatever we have to do to get the kids at camp, we're gonna get the kids at camp. And we got the kids at camp. And it was an amazing experience. We had kids who didn't get physicals. We had a fundraiser at the school, we ran a cool school store, we raised money to get some of the kids to go out to, the CVS to get a camp physical. And Ray was always in the back. I was hearing about this guy, Ray, who I'd never met. Ray was always in the background saying, don't worry, we will hold the bus if we have to hold the bus to get the kids to camp. And really, that's what they did. So I was just so incredibly impressed with the commitment that I was hearing from the staff at Camp Jewell. I've worked with many different agencies, lots of helper agencies, lots of opportunities that come across for kids, and we try to get them enrolled, and there's like a list of regulations, and there's a list of deadlines and expectations that unfortunately so many of our families cannot meet. They don't have $25 for registration fees. They don't have shorts and t-shirts and sleeping bags for their kids. And again, Ruthie said, don't worry about it. And every kid got to camp with everything they needed. They went to camp, and they came back from camp, and for many kids, they just were glowing in a way that I had never seen them glow before. So the experience was so positive. We got a lot of, great feedback, and we had some hesitation about some of the children who had some, challenges and some difficulties, and again, we kept hearing, don't worry about it. Ray says, no problem. They're going to be fine. And he's sort of holding my hand. They're going to be fine. And they got to camp, and they were not only fine, they did fabulously. So the next year, we expanded. And Bruce Douglas, who was our executive director, heard about camp. And Eric Crawford got very involved in camp. And next thing we know, Camp Jewell is offering us a significantly 50 scholarships. And Bruce Douglas says, I'm going to match it with the other 50 scholarships. And by now, the Family Resource Center had been developed. We had Christina working in the office, who did a fabulous job of just organizing and getting everything coordinated. We got the kids everything we needed. Once again, Camp Jewell, just whatever, they offered, they provided the supplies and, sort of, waited for the families that were maybe a little bit slower in responding. And this time I had an opportunity to come up to camp, and we came up to camp last summer. And again, we increased the number of kids that were struggling in schools, the number of kids who weren't doing so well behaviorally in school, the kids that I was starting to see through the intensive intervention team that were, had multiple office referrals and were having challenges that we weren't sure were going to work out once they got to camp. Once again, Ray, Ruthie, Craig told us, don't worry about it. They're going to be fine. And they were fine, and they were great. And these were kids who we, to this day, have pictures of them in our office, and we show them at teacher trainings, and we say, this has been life-changing for these kids. So during the course of all this, I do a lot of professional development with teachers, and we have lots of kids in lots of schools who are struggling with lots of challenges. And something that's become more and more obvious to us, certainly those of us who are involved with urban education, is that we've got many kids who are having a really hard time managing their behavior and self-regulating. And what we've realized through lots of research and getting the professional development put together is we've got so many kids coming to school so unready to learn, so unable to learn because they're dealing with so many adverse experiences in their life. So there's a whole field of study out there now that is really dealing with the effects of what they call toxic stress on kids. And toxic, it comes from the body of work. There's a study called ACEs, which is the Adverse Childhood Experience. There's been getting a lot of press on NPR lately if you have a long car ride into work, and you might be hearing these stories. And these are the kids who have grown up with multiple adverse situations. It could be divorce in the family. It could be poverty. It could be community violence. It could be alcoholism in the family. The study was performed back in 1997. It was, I think, Kaiser Permanente out in California. And what they realized was they had surveyed 17,000 people, all within the middle class, who were having some health issues, and when they looked back into their childhood, they started to see this pattern of these adverse childhood experiences. And these were people predominantly middle class. Most of them actually had college educations. About 40% of the people surveyed were reporting pretty significant adverse childhood experiences to the point where it actually was beginning to impact their health. And when they looked a little bit further, they found that children who come from inner cities and urban areas, that rises to about 50%. So we're seeing lots of kids across the socioeconomic, spectrum who are coming to school with deficits in self-regulation, having difficulties controlling their behavior, difficulties managing frustration and coping. And at the same time, there's a lot of information coming out saying that for the first time really in history, for really about the past 20 years, we're seeing a generation of children who no longer have that intimate contact with nature that they used to have. I mean, kids are growing up, parents are raising kids in a culture of fear, it's real. Kids are scheduled, there's kids who go home after school, they're spending the majority of their lives inside. They're spending the majority of their lives in structured activities and play, whether it's after-school activities, teams, and clubs. They're not having the kinds of experiences that I had as a child, and I'm sure many of you had as children. Most children throughout history, up until about the past 15 or 20 years, naturally just flee to nature. That's where they go, whether it's under a tree or they find a wooded area, or even up until the 70s in cities, kids were able to find places to play. There were spaces that weren't developed. There were parks, there were sidewalks, there were empty lots. And that has gone away. Kids are no longer having these experiences. So their stress has risen significantly, this toxic stress that is really impacting, we know it's impacting the architecture of the brain, the way young children are developing. And it's impacting their ability to modulate that stress because they do not have the experiences that kids that they used to have. And then they come here. And the first day that I came here, last summer, when we had our students here, we drove up, I was here with Eric, and I got out of the car, and it was just like, everything drains out of you. And I saw the kids that I work with, and I almost didn't recognize them because something had changed. There was a difference in their demeanor. I mean, there was a difference in their body language. I've got a picture that I took, which has become like sort of the iconic picture of 4 of our kids who you see this level of peace and calm that I have honestly, in the 5 years of working with those kids, have never seen. So what happens to them at Camp Jewell is amazing. It's life-changing. It is giving them the skills and the resources and the resilience, I do believe, to better manage the stress that they are going to face going forward in their daily lives. We all have it. We have, hopefully, many of us who had opportunities to interact with nature and develop some, like we're teaching in schools now. We're teaching yoga, we're teaching meditation, we're teaching teachers to help calm the kids down by teaching them centering and, mindfulness skills. That's all stuff that we got as kids by just being outside, and kids are no longer getting it. So I do believe that the 2 weeks that they spend here, listening to the birds, hearing the water lap in the lake, the crunch of gravel, touching dirt, playing in groups, having the opportunity to explore freely, relatively freely, yet with structure, and adults that really care about them, that they trust, it's going to absolutely make a huge impact in their lives. We're seeing it already in what these kids are doing at school. And this helps all kids. It doesn't just help the kids from Hartford. It helps the kids from Fairfield. It helps the kids from Stanford, because all kids are experiencing these deficits in terms of the ability to interact with nature. And once they're here, it's sort of a level playing ground for everyone, because everyone's coming in with those same nature deficits, and they're all here together. So I just want to talk, briefly as I close. There's a couple kids that stand out in my mind. And one, Ray, I think, has spoken about before, but there was another student, and when we talk about toxic stress and we talk about complex trauma, this kid went beyond that. I mean, if you had a score for toxic stress, he would have been sky high. He's got a history that you just couldn't imagine any child 10 years old would have a history like that. And he came to Camp Jewell. And I wasn't, unfortunately, able to see him last year because I was away the 2 weeks that he was here. And I was visiting at the school that he's in now, and he came up to me. And I just looked at him and I said, "How you doing?" He's like, shook my hand, and he was just so polite. And he just immediately started telling me about Camp Jewell. He said, "It was just so amazing. Are you going to be there next year? I'm going back." And he's 10 years old. He's already got he wants to be a counselor in training. He wants to get involved in the Camp Jewell leadership programs. And I really couldn't believe this was the same kid that I knew from 3 years ago. And I do believe that camp was responsible for so much of that change in him. So again, it's life-changing. It is the best, I think one of the best things that has happened to me as a school social worker, and I think one of the best things that has happened with CREC is the new partnership that we have developed with Camp Jewell. And I really hope that we can keep it going. And my dream would be to see every child who needs it get an opportunity for 2 weeks at camp. So thank you very much, and we appreciate everything you do for our students. Thanks.
Mary, thank you very much for coming and for sharing with us. Frankly, it's why the staff are here, and it's why we as a board volunteer our time for those very reasons. So thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to take a moment and introduce some people who are receiving the Volunteer of the Year 2015 for Camp Jewell. But before I do, I want to take a moment to say this. This year's award centers around TT's Grotto, which you've heard me mention. I'd like to recognize a few people who have guided each and every volunteer who's worked on the project. Norma and Diane Button, Peter Gove, Pat Wynn, Eric Holda. Without their leadership, this project never gets off the ground. About 9 years ago, my family and I had just arrived at Camp Jewell for our first Labor Day family camp when I heard the unmistakable laugh that could only belong to one person, Kristen Manning. It had been a while since I had seen Kristen, or her husband Dean, but that moment rekindled friendships born some 30 years earlier here at camp. Because you see, that's the amazing thing about Camp Jewell. Friends may go years between visits, but it only takes a few short moments at camp to rekindle old friendships. Our families had a great weekend, and we watched as our friendship extended through our children, my son Noah, daughter Leah, their son Jack, and their daughter Taylor. To give you a little perspective, Kristen, Dean, and I met 30-something years ago when we were campers and then staff here at Camp Jewell. Dean and I actually have a connection through Dean's sister Deb, but that's an entirely different story. We all went our separate ways, occasionally keeping in touch, but here we were that weekend like no time had passed at all. Then one day in May 2012, I received a phone call from Deb, Dean's sister, and unfortunately, this was a call I never expected to receive. Deb proceeded to tell me that Taylor had passed away overnight. I can remember feeling numb and could not imagine what Kristen and Dean were going through. Sharing the news with my family shook me to the core, and we were all devastated. Still, to this day, I cannot imagine how they have coped with the loss of their daughter Taylor. Though filled with grief, the Mannings turned their focus to creating a lasting memory of Taylor and chose to focus on the joy she experienced during her time here at camp. As such, Taylor's Triumph, a 5K race, kicked off this effort and, unbeknownst to them at the time, would help change the face of Camp Jewell forever. A few years earlier, a plan had been in the works to give Camp Jewell a much-needed facelift. A vision of new cabins and an improved waterfront became the features of this effort. With this in mind, the Mannings contacted our exec, Ray Zeddy, and asked him to sit down to discuss their ideas. They wanted their fundraising efforts to provide an enduring legacy here at Camp Jewell in Taylor's memory, and the Taylor Manning Project was born. This labor of love began in the fall of 2013 with the clearing of the grove of trees and rocks between Centennial Lodge and the waterfront. It began with the Mannings coming to camp with friends from seemingly all over New England to kickstart the project. Weekend after weekend, with both large and small groups, work progressed. Each and every weekend, volunteers, many who may never have had a connection to camp otherwise, came to help create TT's Grotto, an amazing system of 3 splash pools cascading from the top to the bottom, connected by waterfalls and rivulets. And if you haven't had a chance today to take a walk down there, please do so. You'll be amazed. During the cold winter months, the Mannings and their legion of volunteers worked on other projects connected to TT's Grotto. Wood was split, sawed, and milled to create campfire wood and bath huts for day campers to change in. The construction area was cleared so that by the time spring arrived, digging could begin. Concrete forms created, and concrete poured to create the 3 ponds. The work never ended, and neither did the stream of volunteers. Sometimes complete strangers, sometimes old friends, all volunteering their time to make sure the project would be finished on time. As TT's Grotto came together, you could see in Dean and Kristen's eyes what the project truly meant to them, what it meant to have all these volunteers working on a project for their daughter. Now please remember, while this is going on, the Mannings continued their fundraising efforts and to date have raised over $100,000, more than enough to complete the project. Simply amazing. Volunteer hours, some 3,000, equaling $90,000 in labor value, has been received as well. For their commitment to keep Taylor's beautiful spirit alive, for all that they have done for Camp Jewell, for the money they have raised, for their legion of volunteers, for the countless hours they have given to camp. I am proud and honored to bestow the 2015 Volunteers of the Year Award to my dear friends, Kristen and Dean Manning. I just want to read you what the plaque says. Camp Jewell YMCA 2015 Volunteers of the Year, Dean and Kristen Manning. Camp Jewell YMCA recognizes Dean and Christine for their outstanding service to camp and TT's Grotto. The countless hours put into this project to fundraise, organize, volunteer, design, and construct the grotto is a heartfelt tribute to their daughter Taylor that will have a lasting impact on the experience of countless campers and families for years to come. Thank you for all you've done and will continue to do to make camp a better place for future generations. The Camp Jewell family.
Thank you, Jay, and everyone here. I am, unfortunately, Kristen and Jack could not be here this evening, but on their behalf, I am humbled and gratefully accept this award. It's been an incredible experience, and thanks to the leadership of Norm and Ray and everyone who's contributed to the project with hopefully not blood, but sweat and hopefully not tears. But the lake could use a few. So, but thank you very much. This is an incredible honor and great thanks.
Thank you, Dean, very much. Thank you for all you've done. Craig Dawson is going to give us an update on summer camp. Yes? Programming. Okay.
A lot of slides on there, right? There we go. Let's try this again. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? All right, so I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about, we've heard a lot about what's happened for the last year here at Camp Jewell, just some of the program highlights of what myself and the entire program staff have done and how many people have been here over the course of the last year. If anyone knows me, they know I like statistics, so I love my numbers. But tonight I'm trying my very best to kind of keep that under control. We're not going to talk too much about that. So as Jay said earlier, we served a record number of kids last year. Last summer seems like a lifetime away in many ways, but at the same time, as we get closer to summer, it seems like it was just yesterday that kids left camp at the end of summer. But we served over about 1,579 different kids in our overnight and our day camp programs, which is kind of the equivalent of about 90,000 meals that happen in this dining hall. So if you're not here in the summer and you haven't seen what it's like, just imagine 600 or so people packed into here in the international room and out in the picnic grove, all eating their meals. If you think it's hot now, you should try coming here in July. And that's actually 364 more camper weeks than we served in the previous year. So last summer was phenomenal here at Camp Jewell. The rest of the year, we even served more people. Almost 15,000 different people come to Camp Jewell between the end of August and mid-June last year. And whether that was for a Nature's Classroom school group or one of the Y school groups or a weekend group or a family camp, there's a phenomenal number of people that came to camp. I'll tell you, I've been here just over 3 years now, and what continues to amaze me is that no matter where you go in Connecticut, you can go get your oil changed in Torrington, which is not too far from here. And the cranky old guy behind the desk, when he sees you, sees a little Camp Jewell sticker on the back of your car, will start talking about how he came here as a kid a long time ago and what kind of experience he had and how vivid those memories still remain to him to that day. And no matter where I go, if I am wearing a staff shirt or if I'm driving my little Prius around and people see the Camp Jewell sticker, they have a connection to camp. And I've worked in a number of camps over my career, and I really can't ever say that that's happened before. The impact that Camp Jewell has had on the communities around Connecticut since it first started is absolutely amazing. We actually served 217 different groups, including 33 new groups last year. We had an amazing growth, especially in our school programs that have been stagnant for a few years, and that enabled us to serve even more people than ever before. As Jay and Ray talked about earlier, at the same time, we had a few new programs. So if we got the new docks down at the waterfront. We have the new zip line. It's about 1,200 feet that goes across the lake and back again. We started the REACH program, which is designed to work with kids on the autism spectrum. We served about 15 different kids last year through that program on Sunday afternoons. Brand new program that we started up for local kids that are on the autism spectrum, that enable them to do things and connect to staff on a one-on-one basis that otherwise isn't available to them. And, you know, as we talked about the correct thing, you know, the real cool thing about that is we served over four times as many kids from the city of Hartford as we had the year before. I will tell you, camp was extremely diverse last year in so many ways, shapes, and form. And the really cool thing I think about Y camps, as opposed to maybe private camps, is that you will get kids from so many different backgrounds that come together at the same time in the same place. The biggest thing, though, and the biggest change we really did was we started to make sure that we were looking towards camp as a whole for the entire year. Our weekend programs and our weekday programs directly feed into our summer camp. And so the more people that we can get here the rest of the year, the more people that have exposure to Camp Jewell, the bigger and better our summer camp program will be. We started to work more closely with our branches to get more information out there, to go to the branches more often, so that people will become more and more aware of what we had to offer here. Regardless of whether it was a summer camp program, a family camp program, a women's wellness program, there were so many different things that we offer here at camp that people weren't aware of. And so we've done a lot more marketing, a lot more outreach over the course of the last year. For me, though, I think, on a personal note, one of the biggest impacts camp has is on my family. And if you were to ask camp directors across the country what one of their biggest fears is, it's their kid going to their own camp. Because how do I say this? My kids love hanging out at Camp Jewell. You know, they live here, whether they're chasing the staff with lightsabers or whether they're being chased by staff. They get to hang out at camp an awful lot, but not always on their best behavior. But it's really cool to live somewhere where my kids really appreciate it. But at the same time, my kids love coming to summer camp and hanging out in a cabin and spending 2 weeks here. Even though they live here, and even though the giant slide is, been there, done that, you know, they can play Gaga whenever they want, they really appreciate the 2 weeks they get to spend at camp in the summer. And a few weeks ago, I was at a wedding in Wisconsin with my wife's family, and they were asking my oldest son, Jaden, about camp and whether he was going to camp in the summer. He was very excited, and he was saying, you know, how excited he was to be in Argo this year again, and all the kind of cool things he'd get to do. And they asked him why he liked camp so much. And quote, and I did not in any way, shape, or form tell him to say this, he said, the coolest thing about camp is when I'm at camp, I can be who I want to be. I can make friends with people I'd never otherwise meet, and it's just not like being at school. I can just be myself. And that's the kind of stuff we put in brochures, but that's not the kind of stuff I tell him, and it's really cool to hear your own kid actually say that. we have so many different things I think we have to offer here at camp. And none of these programs would be possible without an amazing program team. I really don't have an awful lot to do with all of this stuff. It's really the program staff and the program directors that make that magic happen every single day. And so if the program staff could stand up, please, for a second. And if you could join me in giving them a huge round of applause for the hard work they do every day. These guys work really hard. They work really long hours, whether it's during the outdoor center season or especially during summer camp. They eat a massive amount of pasta on a daily or bi-daily basis. And they spend a lot of time running around burning off all of those calories that they consume here in the dining hall. But in addition to the program staff, I'm really fortunate to have what I think are four of the best program directors in the entire country. I have Jody Gove. Steve Scott, our new summer camp program director, has rejoined us this year. Rich Kurtner, who joined us last May and is in charge of our school programs. And Paul Capodona, who joined us at the beginning of the year and is in charge of our weekday programs. And actually what I'd like to do now, just for a few minutes, is we spent a lot of time tonight talking about what's happened in the last year. So I thought we could spend a few minutes with, in this case, Steve, Paul, and Rich coming up to the front to talk about some of the things that we hope to do here at Camp Jewell in the next 3 to 5 years.
Hello, can y'all hear me? So like Craig said, I'm lucky enough to be the school weekday and school program director here at Camp Jewell YMCA, and I've got big hopes and big dreams for our school programs. I think that when I look at the way that our school programs work, I see a ton of potential. I was listening to Mary speak earlier, and she was saying how kids have this nature deficit. And the ability to get outside is something that's really lacking. And it inspired me, and is one of the things that has inspired me for years is I love getting kids outside. So when I look at what we do, that's what we do in our school programs. We give kids from all over Connecticut the opportunity to come to a beautiful place and do things outside with people who, like some of the nicest people in the world. Those program staff you just clapped for are some of the nicest people in the world. So when I think about how can we do this, how can we get more kids the opportunity to get outside, that's kind of what makes me go. And what I've come to realize is if you can't have, unfortunately, a big part of our school systems are measurable outcomes, and outcomes that are correlated with curricula. So what I've been trying to do with my background in education is to take the things that we do here at camp and make them somehow connected to what the school programs do. We have a couple of new programs. Ed is one of our longtime teachers here at Camp Jewell. He's actually letting us do a couple of things that we've never done before, so I'm really, really excited. And we've been working with schools who've been taking that leap of faith and letting us do some new programming. But what I see for the future of us in terms of the school program and organization that works with schools is having a comprehensive curriculum that works really well with schools all around Connecticut. We've got a ton of really great school partners. A bunch of the correct schools come to us. We have a bunch of schools from Bridgeport, Achievement First, a couple from New York City, and all around Connecticut that give these kids an opportunity to step into a place that's outside their comfort zone and really just a gorgeous place. And so like I said, I want to drive kids here by providing a service for the schools that hopefully eventually will become so integral into their curriculum that they're able to get so much out of it that they can't cut it out of their budgets. So that's my goal for the next 5 years, is to have a really comprehensive and solid curriculum that we can work with and get people here. So I'll pass it on to Mr. Scott. Thank you.
All right. Craig says that I talk too much, so he said speak for a minute, and I'll do my very best. And the way to do that was in our 3 goals for the next 5 years. And I had 2 that were nice and quick, and the third one was a little bit longer. The first thing that I suggested as a goal for the next 5 years was to have and to make sure that there is a family camp for at least every month there is going. Now, at the moment we do a whole bunch of them clumped together. There's a few empty months. I thought, wouldn't it be great if we did a family camp or a family kind of event every single month? It's a little bit tricky to do in the summer, but we'll find a way. The second one was to make sure that there was a new or an improved program every single year. Now, this year is going to be amazing because, well, we have an awful lot of new and improved programs coming, which will make the next 4 years after that a little bit harder. Those are the first 2. The third one was a vision, I guess, of my own and potentially some other co-hosts here, to try and make sure that our summer camp program happens year-round, to reach out to our campers, to find our leaders in training, our CITs, our counsellors in training, to find them in their communities and to help them have an impact in their local communities, to reach out, to make Camp Jewell part of their own local community. Yes, of course, it'll be a brilliant marketing tool for us, and what a genius idea. But more importantly, it'll be for our young people that are out and about there to have a say in their community and to actually implement the skills and the talents that they've learned here at Camp Jewell in and around where they live. That, in less than a minute, is my 3 goals for the next 5 years. Capitano?
Thank you, Mr. Scott. That was delectable, as always. So I am in charge of the weekend programming, and I can tell you that Girl Scouts are a ton of fun. We just had about 400 here, and when I was thinking about what to say today, they actually inspired me with a lot of ideas and a lot of good ways to partner with not only them, but everyone that we work with. So, for example, I was talking with a woman who was part of the Girl Scouts of America, and she was talking about how we don't offer ways to get badges or their journeys. If you know anything about that, it's like individualized curriculum for Girl Scouts to do what they need to do. I don't know, it's complicated and complex, but basically they encouraged me to call the Girl Scouts of America and try to make a partnership with them to see if we can offer badges of our own to give to these Girl Scouts, so we are already on their insurance, but become an even bigger part of what the Girl Scouts of America are. And so that's in the plan, but that got me thinking that we don't only need to do that with the Girl Scouts of America, but more colleges that have Greek life programs, other clubs. We already have a huge connection with where did you go to college, Ray? Springfield College. That's how I remember. We have a huge connection, and Ray is one of the biggest reasons of that, but also they come here and they talk to their programs. So networking through the programs that we already have. And I definitely want to grow weekends that are specific to Girl Scouts so that we can have individualized programming that is specific to each group. Right now, if we have a Girl Scout weekend and a team building group from a college and all these different groups together, it's great, they get to intermingle, but the program staff are kind of all thrown out into different areas, and we can't offer as individualized a program as we would want. So that's one of the goals, is to make more weekends like that. And the last thing I'm going to say, because I'm getting long-winded like Steve usually does, just kidding, Steve. We have a REACH program, which we talked a little bit about, and I am looking to offer more programs for different demographics, different populations, and one of my big goals is to get into veterans and see if we can start offering programming for veterans and a lot of different people that have been impacted in so many different ways, and that we can impact in so many ways as well. And that's just one of the many ways. So thank you for your time, and enjoy.
So as you can see, not only have we hopefully accomplished a lot in the last year, we have very exciting plans moving forward. One of the first people I ever worked for, the Y's motto was, you had to get a lot done and have a lot of fun at the same time. If you are here at any time at camp, you'll know there are a lot of things going on and the staff work really hard. But one of the really coolest things about working in Camp Jewell is that, hopefully as you could just see from the banter that was going backwards and forwards, we'll talk about that later, Steve, is that at the same time it's working really hard, we also have a lot of fun doing what we're doing. And I feel very blessed to be able to work here at camp, as I know do all the staff. And if you're ever in the area or ever in the neighborhood, whether it's during summer camp or over the course of a weekend, you want to stop by and say hi and kind of check out things in action, please do so. And now I'll pass you on to Ray. Thank you.
All right, so I will sort of wrap things up here for us in a lot of ways. I've been very spent this whole evening being very proud of the people that I get to work with every day here at camp. They are an incredible group of people. Proud of the volunteers that participate in making camp what it is. They give so much of their time and effort to bettering camp, and proud of my family and my wife for putting up with all the time that it takes to make camp run, and proud of my friends, because so many of the people that are close to me and that are important to me have come through this place. And I think that's a common theme with most everybody that comes in contact with camp. I had a unique experience, not necessarily a good experience, but a unique experience a little over a week ago. I was leaving the association office in Hartford. I had just been meeting with Liz Whitty, who happens to be here tonight. And it was about 5:30 in the evening. It was a Friday, and if you work in Hartford, or if you've ever been in Hartford around that time, you know the traffic is absolutely crazy. And I was leaving the XL Center, and when I leave around that time, I drive right over 84, and as I drive over 84, the little bridge, I can look down and see what the traffic looks like on the highway, and if it looks good, then I sometimes hop on 84 and take it into Farmington and get off there, or into West Hartford, and kind of skip through the downtown area. But in this particular day, it was a parking lot. And so I said, well, I guess I'm not doing that. And at that moment, I was approaching the light on the other side of 84, and I was in the center lane, and there were two cars in the left-hand lane that were taking the left-hand turn, most likely to get on 84. And as I approached the light, there was no one in front of me, and the light was red, and I was slowing down. And I was thinking to myself how I was not taking 84, and then the light turned green, and I started to speed up, and right at that moment, two kids on bicycles, 10, maybe 11 years old, came across the intersection, and the light was green, but if I continued, I would have hit them. So I slowed and came to a stop right where you would normally stop if you were waiting for the light. And the first kid went by, and the next kid was probably 15 or 20 feet behind him. And as he came across the intersection in front of me, a woman driving a very expensive car, most likely very stressed out from her day, and leaving Hartford in as much a hurry as she could, and looking at that green light, came flying past me on the right-hand side and hit that young man on his bicycle. And I immediately panicked, and I put the car in park, and I jumped out. And as I jumped out, the young man who had kind of hit the hood of the car and kind of fallen to the side was standing up, and the woman had gotten out of her car, and she was in a panic and kind of screamed, "Are you okay? Oh my God!" And the young man picked up his bicycle and took off down the road. And I called to him. I said, "Are you okay? Hey, man, slow down." I tried to get him to stop, and him and his friend just kept on riding. And as he was picking up his bicycle, he looked right at me for that moment, and he was scared out of his mind. And I spoke with the woman. She called the police and reported it, and I left her my information as a witness. And when it was all kind of settled, I started driving home, and I had a long hour-plus drive from Hartford, and I couldn't think about anything except for that kid the whole ride home. And I thought about, maybe I should have gotten in my car and driven after him. What's he going through right now? Is he hurt? Is he not hurt? And mostly thought about, what is he going home to? This is an African-American youth from the north end of Hartford, which is right where I was. He looked just like all of those 89 kids that came from the correct schools last summer. He was probably in about 5th grade. And I thought, gosh, I hope when he gets home that his mom is there, and he runs in the house and he tells his mom what happens, and there's this, embrace where she is, so relieved that he's okay, and she checks him out thoroughly, and she maybe takes him to the hospital just to get checked out, and that, she calls the school and says that, he shouldn't be in gym class tomorrow because he's sore, and that maybe she calls the police to report it herself, and that she checks on him and gives him maybe some ice, because at the very least this kid's going to have one hell of a Charlie horse in his leg, if it's not broken or what have you. But as I was driving home, I couldn't help but think that that's probably not what's happening for this young man. Or at least it's less likely that it's happening for this young man. And I started thinking about all of the things that would have occurred if it were my mom and in the family that I grew up at, and all the things that very likely are not occurring for him. And I was reminded of a passage in this book I've been reading about the impact on poverty, and so much of what Mary talked about was here, but I just wanted to read these 2 paragraphs. Children born to poverty are less likely to receive regular medical care. They are less likely to see a dentist. They are less likely to have educated parents. They are less likely to have books and magazines in their homes. They are less likely to be read to each day by a parent or guardian. They are less likely to be enrolled in a pre-kindergarten program. They are less likely to have their own bedroom and a quiet place to study. They are less likely to hear a large and complex vocabulary at home compared to children in professional families. They are less likely to get 3 nutritious meals every day. They are less likely to live in sound housing. They are less likely to live in a safe neighborhood. They are less likely to take family trips to the local library or museum. They are less likely to participate in organized activities after school, such as sports, dramatics, art, or dance, or music classes. They are less likely to take family vacation or go to summer camp. Children of the poor are more likely to be born preterm or with low birth weight, and consequently suffer cognitive impairments often, learning disabilities, and attention deficits. They're more likely to suffer fetal alcohol syndrome. They are more likely to live in a dwelling that is infested with vermin. They are more likely to have a parent or guardian who is incarcerated or unemployed. They are more likely to be homeless. They are more likely to move frequently and change schools frequently because of parents' inability to pay rent. They are more likely to have asthma. Children who suffer from asthma are likely to wake up during the night wheezing and be drowsy and inattentive the next day at school. Poor children under poverty are more likely to be ill without getting treated by a doctor. They're more likely to be hungry or to suffer anemia. They're more likely to have undetected vision problems, more likely to have undetected hearing problems. They're more likely to have toothaches and cavities. They're more likely to be exposed to lead and the paint on the walls of their homes, which causes cognitive deficiencies, obviously affecting academic performance. The fact is that if you grow up in poverty, the cards are stacked against you in so many ways. And I drove here, and I got out the door, and I saw all these kids coming in for the weekend, and I saw the volunteers coming in for the work, And I was reminded of the kids that are coming here this summer, and I realized that Camp Jewell is the answer to all those issues. Camp Jewell and the people in this room work so hard to even that playing field every single day. And I talk to the alumni of camp as part of my job all the time. So many of our alumni are teachers and principals and guidance counselors and social workers. And all they talk about are the challenges of schools and testing and teaching to the test and all these problems that I hear. And then I come here and I see students in nature, and I see all the things that Rich talked about and that Mary talked about happening every day. And I think Camp Jewell is the answer. Because where schools are spending more money on teaching to the test and less money on dramatics, art, and physical education, we are solving that problem every day. And when I speak to community leaders and people in government, and they talk about the disparities and the segregation of our society here in Connecticut and the towns that are separated by the haves and the have-nots, and how it's so difficult to get things done because the folks in one town don't seem to have any desire to help the people in another. And I come here, and I see kids from the north end of Hartford, and this year we'll be getting kids from the south end and the Latino community from Hartford as well, playing and interacting and telling stories and breaking down stereotypes with the kids from Avon and Simsbury and Westport and Stamford. And Camp Jewell is the answer. We are solving the world's problems every day. Every single one of us, all the time. And so I say thank you to all of you for being a part of it, for doing all you can, for volunteering, for giving your time and your energy, your enthusiasm, and your heart to make this a better place, and most importantly, accessible to all. Thank you.
We have the best executive director in any camp in the world. Thank you for coming tonight. The future of Camp Jewell is bright. I appreciate all of you being here. A longtime friend, former junior counselor of mine, came from Maryland today to be here just for this meeting. I thank Jeff very much for coming all the way. Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz said there's no place like home. I would argue that there's no place like Camp Jewell. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.